Grace and truth comes from John 1:14, where it says Jesus was full of grace and truth. Join us today on this podcast as we dive into deep revelation and find ways to make it understandable, cowboy style, simple. That's the way I like it, and I hope you do too. But that is hard.
Okay, one of the things that I always appreciate about you, Johnny, was the fact that, in my 30-some-odd years of being here, the church has gone through up and downs, and I happen to know myself personally. Times I have some great friends who just, I don't know if you know, they retired now, the Neshams.
Yes.
But, to know that you didn't tell anybody no in all the times, unless if it was a spiritual thing that, no, I can't go do that. But, you never questioned, like, you were willing tonight to just go to somebody's house and kick back and relax and sing them some songs. But, to know that you went to the Neshams and all that, and we know how much fuel costs today.
Yeah.
How can you go to places that probably give you $50 in a handshake and maybe a barbecued meal, and that's it? How do you survive out there on the road?
Wow.
In those kind of conditions?
I have absolutely no idea, and I mean that. Like, it's funny, but it's the craziest thing. Just recently, and this is live, so I'm gonna be careful. But we've gotten a couple meetings that we had low offerings, right? And the first thing you do is kind of like, because literally the one offering it was enough money to get us to the next town, right, and fuel. That's it. Yeah. No food, no. And you do have that kind of like that, yeah. And then the next thing you know, somebody just walks up and puts $100 bill in your hand, or somebody walks up and gives you a check for a couple thousand, or whatever it is, or buys you tires on your outfit, my rig. I learned it from Vern Jackson. So okay. Vern was, and Coy Huffman really, but yeah. Vern was I had these little red tapes that I made, and he asked me to meet him from Arizona and go on tour with him and meet him in Ohio. Okay. And I had a 1983 Oldsmobile with 117,000 miles on it, and I drove all the way to Ohio and met him there in a Lincoln. It was an old nasty car. And I get there and he goes, "Oh, I didn't know you were going to actually show up." I'm like, you better know, and my kind of cowboy, I was like raring up, and so bottom line is, I go do these stuff and he wouldn't pay me. And I didn't, no offense to him, he never said he would. I just assumed that he would, Right. He said, "But you can put your tapes out." And I'm like, okay. And I just put my tapes out there, and people would come up and give me hundreds of dollars just for one tape. Wow. And just took care of us. And it was like, from that point on, I just realized, number one, and Gale is the driving force of this, we live by our giving. We're big, we believe in tithing and giving, and we're big about that. And then because we're big about that, then we sit in the safety of knowing that I've never seen the righteous forsaken or the hungry.
Seed out begging for bread. Yeah.
And so we live purely by faith, and we just figure if we just stay going and doing what God has called us to do, He's the authority. He's our provider. I don't look at churches as our provider. I don't look at people as a provider. Matter of fact, and then I'll make this really short, but we were arguing when we finally got my life right. I went through a 7-year program called Restoring the Foundations. It's for ministers that had fallen, and God restored my life and renewed. And I found out that I had a bunch of religion, and that's how that all fell apart. And that I learned who Jesus was and broke those bondage of religion and a whole lot of stuff through this program called it's for ministers. Yeah. And so long story short is that we were going through that program, and Gale, and my pastor called me in the office and said, "Okay, it's time for you to get back on the horse and finish this deal. You need to go back into this." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll do it on the weekends or something like that." And Gale just believed this is what we're supposed to do. Right. And we fought over it. And I'm like, you have no idea how hard it is.
Yeah.
And to be in front of these people and hope that somebody gives us something. And somebody, I hated that. And we were always broke, and so I'm like fighting with her. And one night we're in the bedroom and I'm on the warpath, back and forth, this arguing, and she's reading this book. And she finally just threw it at me. And she said, when are you going to stand up and be the man of God that I thought you were?
Uh-oh. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. And little by little, the long story is that I was able to quit my job, and I just made a decision that if she believed in us, and that I needed to get on board. And that has been the greatest decision. And there are rough times, but we are more than provided for. God has been so beyond grateful for us.
Yes.
And this $6 a gallon fuel has absolutely hurt us.
Yeah.
But we still are, here we are.
Right.
Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, that's what I always remind myself, because I was raised that way, living by faith, my dad being a pioneering pastor, and just being surprised, but yet confident that, hey, God's going to supply. Why do I stress about it? It's going to work out.
It really is.
Okay, let's talk about ministry now. Okay, you're doing this, but I know, Gale, God laid something on your heart, and let's go back first of all to the bags. God laid something on your heart a number of years ago, and tell me how that morphed. Like, how did it come even into existence that you wanted to put these kits together?
Well, when we started traveling, obviously the more you travel, the more you realize that your eyes are open to all the homelessness throughout this country. It's astonishing.
Yes.
And we were the first time I ever came to Arizona, we started in Sierra Vista, and one of his, I guess he's
elders,
a pastor or whatever, was showing us around and showing us all the homeless and how they live in the washes, and there's whole communities and everything. And it blew my mind, because in Michigan, you don't really see that because it gets cold there, So, but down there, obviously you get cold, but not to the degree that in Michigan you do. So it just really shocked me. It never saw anything like that before. And so they started talking about how they give out different things or whatever. And so I started looking into it and realizing that that's just what they need. They just want to be seen, first of all. But then they also need, we put these gallon-sized bags together, and we put either a bottle of water, hygiene products, toiletries, snacks, whatever can fit in there, and just give it to them. And we realize that it's not what's in the bag, it's who's holding the bag. So it's another connection of, can we pray for you, or even just saying God bless, or, God sees you, or whatever, just that connection sometimes it's even as we're driving by, just that they're being seen, because obviously you can see that they're struggling in whatever way, shape, and form.
Right.
And any glimmer of hope for them is what they need.
So how many bags do you think you've given out to this point?
Oh man, thousands.
Thousands? Okay.
Oh yeah.
And how could we be a part of that? Is there something we can do besides just giving you money? Or is that, no, it's better for us to give you money so that you can buy what you actually need to put in the bags?
Right. So that's probably the easiest way, because people were donating, what they would get in hotels, like shampoos and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I have millions of those.
Okay.
Well, we don't have room in the bus.
Right. And we don't have room to carry all that stuff. So it's easier to just, when we run out of a certain thing, that I can go buy as many as we need at that time.
Right.
Okay. That makes sense.
And then,
so we keep about 30 bags in the Jeep and about 30 bags in the coach at all times, and we're just always
have an eye open to somebody with a sign
and
on the side of the road.
And that's what saying, I thought is so brilliant, is once we saw that, then all of a sudden you start seeing it everywhere. Then just like it became alerted to us, like, wow, this is a major problem.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
My son would be saying amen to you right now, for sure. Now, something happened, though, that started making it a little bit different. I want you to talk about Florida. I want to start with you first, and then we'll let Johnny do that. What's the deal with Florida?
Good question.
So actually what's really funny is, so I have family in Florida, and so that was kind of the first open door to get us into the Florida area. And we would go there, and they actually live in Bradenton, which is on the beach area. Okay. And then we found a friend that's more in the central part of the state, So we went there, and then we went more north in the central part. And so there's a complete difference. I don't know if you've ever been to Florida, but there's a complete difference between the middle of the state and the sides of the state.
Okay.
So you got beach people and cowboys.
Yes, exactly. And so I was never aware of that. So we'd always go to the beach, which I love the beach. But then we would go to the middle of the state. And the one friend, he lives further south, and I'm like, I don't know how anyone lives here. There's literally nothing here.
Right.
Literally nothing here. But then we went to another friend's place, and actually Johnny and I had this whole conversation, and I said to him, I don't know how anyone lives in Florida. I absolutely can't stand it here. I can't wait to get out of here.
Yeah.
The humidity, the bugs, the everything, it's crazy. I don't know why anybody would live here. Besides, the beaches are nice, but you can only do that for so long, Yeah. And so then it was the next year, I think it was the next year, and COVID hit. And we were actually stuck in Florida.
Our kids literally said, don't come home.
Yeah, and so it kind of started to grow on us a little bit more. We were stuck. So we were actually in Bradenton doing the whole beach thing and everything, and then a friend of ours wanted us to come more north central.
Ocala.
And so I'm like, man, you know what, Johnny, this is so weird, but I actually am really liking it here. Like, the weather is perfect. I just love everything about it. Well, then where we were staying at our friend's house, the property next to him became available. And it was through a whole lot of turmoil, but the guy wanted to sell and get out, and we knew it was a steal of a deal. And so we're like, okay, we need to get this property, and it was going to help our friend out and all of this stuff. And I'm making a really long story short.
Yes,
so
very short.
Yeah, so we ended up purchasing this property, and so then
okay, wait just a second. You live by faith. How on earth did you?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
exactly.
We got a little bit of time, but
exactly. So it was actually Johnny's idea that he wanted to purchase this property, and we really didn't have any idea of how we were going to do it.
None.
And none at all. But he just felt like, we just feel like this is, something God really wants us to do. And so, and it was multifaceted. We were helping our friend out. We needed a kind of a place to park our motorhome in the wintertime too, and just a lot of different things. And so when we stepped out and said we were going to purchase it, somebody came along and donated a lot of money to us.
Wow.
And so it was just a whole godsend.
Now, when did the vision part come into being?
And so then, once we purchased that, then I'm thinking to myself, what are we going to do with this property? And so the property had...
Okay, go ahead, property had.
The property had a ton of trees.
That's what I was going to say.
So the back of it was pretty much like a swamp.
It's a swamp.
Like a jungle is really what it looked like. I mean, you couldn't really even walk
Nowhere
in there.
near the beach.
Nowhere near the beach.
It was really bad. Like, you couldn't, it was all really, there was really water laying in there continuously, and then just trees everywhere. And then the front part of the property was all trees also. So it really was a jungle, and it was only the middle part where the people had lived, and they had like a really small driveway and a little area that was mowed, but you could tell it was never taken care of. They didn't really do a lot to it. And so we decided to go in there right away and start cutting down trees.
Yeah, I watched the videos.
Yes,
that was crazy.
And we actually cut down about
300,
50 trees by hand with a chainsaw, everything.
Chainsaw, not a...
Yeah.
And then we had a friend of ours come in with an excavator, and he came in and cleaned the whole property. And so once we...
we cut down 50 trees and it took us about a week with chainsaws. That dude came in there with an 87,000-pound excavator and cleared 300 trees in a day.
Yeah.
And took the trees. He was taking these 300-foot trees and throwing them up in the air and taking the dirt off of them and putting them on burn files. And we're just like, this is insane. So,
So then once we started clearing it, then I've always been associated with faith-based rehabs.
Right.
There's several in Florida that we're connected to. And
she said faith-based rehabs, just in case, because it was really bad.
And so the church that we're connected to down there, they were having Teen Challenge come in, and some of the ladies were graduating, and they were up there telling their testimonies and different things like that. And there was one lady that was graduating the course, and she knew that she couldn't go back to where she needed to, or where her family was.
Yeah.
Yes. And so she was like in her mid to late 30s, and she was going to go have to live with her 93-year-old great aunt in a little tiny house just so that she had a roof over her head and that she didn't have to go back to where she came from, where the addiction started.
Right.
And so I knew right then, and that's always been something that's been on my heart. I always knew that once they come out of rehab,
where do they go?
They have no place to
get
go, and they
sucked right
always
back
go
in.
back home, and they get sucked back in or whatever. And so my heart was, as soon as I heard that, I was like, that's it. That's what this property is going to be for, is we're going to have, whether it's an RV, whether it's a tiny home, whether it's whatever, and we're going to have, it's going to be just kind of a
Safe house.
Yeah,
Safe
it's going to
place.
be a safe house, but
Transition.
yes, like a transition place. It's nothing permanent, but just enough so they could get established and then get on their feet and go out. And then I realized, as my eyes were starting to open, that it's not just women that are in rehab.
Right.
There's a lot of women out there that are
Abuse.
hurting, that might not have went through rehab, maybe need rehab, but they just need a hand up.
Yeah.
Not a hand out, a hand up, just to get reestablished and then be able to move on. So-
And even some getting out of jail, even.
Mm-hmm.
I have told, there's been certain people in Wickenburg that I have them, if they've been in addictions of any sort, sometime I tell them, you know what, you need to leave here. Once they go through Teen Challenger, they come to us,
Don't
Celebrate
come.
Recovery. The best thing for you to do is get out of town.
Get out.
You got to get out,
Yes.
because I see that you build spiritual altars where your addictions are. So every time you drive by that, it's like the demons are crawling you.
Yes.
It's by the memories. This is where I got high. This is where I did this.
That's
This is where I
exactly
did.
right.
And every time you're going by it, it's like the demons are still calling to you. Unless if you go back and build a new altar
That's
in that
good.
spot.
That's a
If
good
I go
word.
back and build a new altar there, then maybe I'm strong enough to stand. I tell them that. Drive there, park in front of that old drug house, have a worship time with Jesus. Build a new experience on top of the old one and be set free. But other people, I go, you know what, dude, you got to get out of town, or this cycle is going to happen all
Yes.
over again.
Yes.
That's good.
So I can really see that. I can see that happening in a powerful way. So what? And isn't it crazy? The devil thought when he did COVID
That's exactly
and shut
right.
us down,
Yep.
but now all the creativity and the other things that God sets on our hearts by vision and opportunity,
Right, yeah.
it falls in our lap. And to have somebody with a big old tractor come and somebody else give you some money and here, look at this, what's happening. So how many tiny homes, or like my cousin in Nashville, she bought these old trailers and started refurbishing them. But how many tiny houses or whatever, like where are you at in the process of that vision being fulfilled?
I'll kind of quickly answer this. First of all, was her vision, her dream, and she had been following me, and going on the road with me and doing the hard things with me for years. And she just said, "Is it okay if we just stay here for a year and let me work on my vision?"
Right.
And I was obviously crying again. I'm like, absolutely, 100%. So we canceled all meetings and just
I
stayed
know,
there and
yeah,
worked.
I know.
Yeah. And so long story short is that the first thing we did is there was a young family that came to us that had 2 kids, and then they were pregnant with their third one, and they were living in this little bitty like lean-to barn that the previous guy kind of made up. And Gale walked up, she said, "We're not putting that family in there." She said, "I can't be a slumlord,"
Right.
And so we got the funds together and built a 2-bedroom expansion on that and put that family in there. And so now it's a 3-bedroom, beautiful place for them, and we completely redid it, and they're really thrilled with that. So that that's one. And then we bought a 5th wheel, and we didn't know what we bought it for. We put my parents in there when they came down, but we just knew. Bottom line is there was a lady that came to us that was having some issues, and so we just put her in the 5th wheel. And then we made a decision that all of the money that she would pay, we would have her actually pay per month, and all that money would go to paying off, having her buy the rig. So when she leaves, she can take the RV
rig
with her.
Wow.
Yeah, and we really have a vision for that. And then the last thing, the one that just happened, is somebody donated to us a 48-foot refrigerated truck trailer. And we're looking at it, and Gil was like, "Let's turn that into a tiny house." I'm like, "Do you have a mouse in your pocket?" "I don't know what you mean. Let's do what?" I'm not handy. That's not my
Right,
deal.
right.
I'm not pastor. By the way, your pastor is amazing. I'm not handy like that. I don't know how to do any of that, but I had to learn fast. And we literally turned that trailer into a tiny home, and it turned out beautiful, amazing. And we put a young lady in there and her 13-year-old daughter. They live in that trailer. And I was talking to the 13-year-old daughter, and I said, "Where were you living before?" And she said they were with 9 other people in a single wide trailer. So this was a major big deal. So we have room for one more. We have before there was a double wide trailer on there. We thought we could refurbish that. We walked inside and it was just full of everything you could imagine in Florida. I mean, it's just terrible. So you should see all these videos on YouTube because they're kind of funny. We literally ran a tractor into the trailer and then just piece by piece, just tore that trailer apart. But it came with a 10 by 12 concrete platform. So we want to put another tiny home onto that. And then once that lady takes that trailer, we're going to buy another RV. So in essence, we'll just do 2 more. And then we also have 4 RV spots. So there was another lady that was a friend of Gale's that had a little RV, and she just needed a safe place, and so she just came to the property and plugged up and stayed there for free. So I think God brings us the people that we need to have.
Again, my reason in all this, because I kind of watch you, and I was going to talk about your morning devotion and stuff, but we've about run out of time. But I felt like it was very important that we get this on tape and that it's out there. Because I think people can be watching right now, which I got cousins down in Safford who faithfully watch, and people around who are watching, that maybe there's people that will connect with that. Sometimes it's graduates of treatment facilities and programs, that they've done well now. And God has blessed them, and they're entrepreneurs now, and God is blessing their business. And this might be the kind of thing that they do understand. Here in the state we have Home of Hope, which is our women's center in Casa Grande. And I've always been concerned about that because I have put women in rehab that came back out and didn't have a safe place to go. And they go right back into the cycle again. And I've always thought there's got to be some way that we can help them. And if it's sending them to Florida, to you, or again.
I forgot to kind of end that story with that trailer. So somebody donated us the trailer. But I don't know if you've noticed how expensive wood and all that kind of stuff is. And so we're like, what are we going to do with this trailer, And we were just in Missouri, Cameron, Missouri, at Passion Church. I love them and love that church. And a guy came to us afterwards, and we were just telling what we're doing, And he said, my mother used to take in these girls and help them and set their feet back on solid ground kind of thing. And she's passed away now. And if you would let me put I think it says Mama's House or something on it, we'd like to donate to help you to build that trailer out. So it was like $20,000
well, see, there can be those kind of things where again people RV'd for a while and now they're not RVing anymore, and they may say, okay, well, here's the way that we can give it as a tax donation or not. We don't even care. Here it is, use it for the kingdom.
And we are a 501c3, so even the whole property is not in our name, it's in our ministry's name.
Okay,
and we'd like to see different places like this pop up across the nation because it's needed all over.
Oh, it is. It is.